Have you ever realized that most people who are diabetic or people who have these chronic conditions, even arthritis, even cancer, have you ever realized that these people know their medicines very well? They even know the colors, they even know if the drugs has changed, they even know the companies. But the same people have zero information or even very little information about the disease. Have you ever realized that? Like your grandfather, like your father, like your cousin, your aunt, all of them, specifically these people who are a little older, they totally know their drugs. Not even older, even the youths, they know their medicines. They take those medicines faithfully. They buy these medicines on time, but they don't even know what they are treating. They don't even know the disease. Most of the clients that I interact with, I always ask you a question. If you've interacted with us before, I always ask a question. What is this condition that you're suffering from? Or what did your doctor tell you about this condition? And then they tell me, one, I was told I have sukari. If I'm diabetic, I was told I have sukari or I have pressure. And then number two, I was told that it is irreversible. So therefore, I have to manage it as I take these drugs, and I'll take these drugs for a lifetime. And then I sit back and I say, hey, how bad is the system that one, we don't give these people information, and number two, if we are giving them information, we are loading them with the wrong information. We are actually selling them the fear. And that is possibly one of the differences in healthcare that I provide and the normal healthcare that you're used to. And I realize it's so hard to help you unlearn most of the things. And most people actually don't want to be saved. I also realize that like most people who are suffering from chronic conditions, they don't want to be saved. They simply believe that drugs will actually save their lives from the foods that they are eating. So they believe that as they eat the bad foods, medicines are actually coming in to change their lives. So keep eating the bad foods. You will simply take drugs, and these drugs will help you change your situation, even though you're still eating the same foods. Now, unlearn that. Is one of the most misguided statements or beliefs that you're supposed to have in your head. Number two, I realized that most of my clients who have chronic conditions, they own up the disease. They actually believe they are diabetic, and then it's now their disease. So I am diabetic. Hii sukari yangu. These are statements that we need to actually start changing, because when you own that disease and you believe, you become. So we need to start changing the mindsets of our people in regards to these chronic conditions. So what is diabetes? Because I know most of you don't actually know what diabetes is. Most of you still think that diabetes is high blood sugars. That is hyperglycemia. That is not diabetes. Now, as we continue eating the sugars, because diabetes is a sugar disease, as we continue eating the sugars, what is happening to us is we are loading ourselves with this glucose. Remember, glucose is very okay. There's no problem with this glucose. It is very okay because cells use glucose. But I always tell you, the only reason why your cells are stuck to using glucose as energy is because you have never provided them with an alternative energy, because they are designed to survive. Therefore, if you load them with glucose all the time, they are actually reluctant because they are waiting for you to bring in glucose. Okay, so that they can use. They actually don't have to struggle to get the glucose. That's why burning fat to lose weight is very hard, because your system in general has just been accustomed to actually eating or utilizing glucose as energy, and you're bringing in glucose, which does not require a lot of energy to just burn. Okay, unlike fat, you'll require a lot of energy and effort to burn the fat to get either the glucose or glycerol or the ketone bodies. So you'll require a lot of effort to burn the fat. But the body is used to glucose all the time. Why is the body used to glucose? It's because you're feeding it with glucose, of course. That's what we do. 90% of our plates are carbohydrates. I'll repeat this. In the morning, when you take your tea that has milk, that has sugar, and then bread that has margarine, you've taken about 95% of that as carbohydrates. Because when you boil milk, shifts from being a protein, you destroy the protein structure, you actually change the protein structure, you destroy the fat structure in the milk, you kill the microorganisms in the milk, and therefore you just remain with lactose, which is a carbohydrate. So you're remaining with carbohydrate, which is lactose. You're adding on sugar, which is glucose or sucrose, which is basically fructose and glucose. And then you're eating bread, which is basically a simple carbohydrate. That's another glucose plus gluten. You're adding on margarine or honey. Honey is sugar. So that's another sugar. or another carbohydrate. For those of you who use margarine, that is a seed oil. Then you're putting, you're adding on 2 sausages or smokies, that is processed red meat. So as I look at your table, I'm wondering, what is the nutritional value of this table? There's nothing here. There's nothing here. So we are actually used to feeding our systems with carbohydrates, and that is the norm. When you eat your rice and beans, all carbohydrates. When you eat chapati and beans, all carbohydrates. Then you add in maybe cabbages as your vegetables. Cabbages also have fiber, that is a carbohydrate. Okay, and then you've cooked the vegetables in seed oil, so no nutritional value. That is now fiber, all carbohydrates. Then you add in, for our guys from central Kenya, you add in our roux, this Irish potato, another starch, basically carbohydrate, which is actually very, very adulterated. Irish potatoes are one of the foods that are actually so genetically modified, and they are so much produced on large scale. So the chemicals, the glyphosates, the herbicides are all logged into that Irish potato that you eat, and you call it chips or French fries. They are deep fried in seed oils, and then you use tomato paste that has no tomatoes. It is literally fructose, and that is a carbohydrate. So imagine if you're taking that breakfast, you're taking your lunch as chapati and dondo, so chapati and beans, then you're taking your dinner as ugali, vegetables, and 2 pieces of meat because your nutritionist warned you against taking meat. Okay, so you're suffering the consequences of actually a very bad diet. So I'm looking at your plate, I'm seeing everything is carbohydrate from morning all the way to night. But when I ask you, how is your diet? You're so fast to tell me, my diet is okay. I eat a balanced diet. Then when we get into this balanced diet, we start unlearning. You start wondering, have I just been doing all the wrong things? Because the reality is, by the time you're thinking to come to me to find solutions for your health problems, you are in trouble. So at least at that moment in time, accept yourself. Because most of you are always living in denial. You're always living in denial. So but before I just continue, allow me to just put up the contact. I realized everybody's asking me for the contact, my consultation contact. So I want to put it up here and pin it. 0707 07 47 22. For those of you who actually want to reach us out on consultation, both online and physical consultation, you can use that contact that I'm pinning up there. Good. Use that contact to get to us. Book your appointment. We will make sure that you get the best services ever.